Good morning, sixth graders. I hope everybody is doing well today. It's Tuesday. Let's do this. We got kind of a full day today. Remember, if you don't get something done, that's what that afternoon time is for. So if we don't get to the Boy of the Painted Cave during first and second period today, then you can go ahead and finish that after school. All righty. So our book talk today is this book right here. It's by Joel Parker Rhodes. It is called Black Brother, Black Brother. Again, Joel Parker Rhodes came to some of the schools in Roseville, including Stone Ridge, where I was working at the time, a couple of years ago. That was way before she wrote this book. I also talked about one of her other books, Ghost Boys, last week. So this is her newest book. It's about two brothers. They both have an African-American mother and a white dad. And so when you have two different parents of different races, sometimes you look more like one, sometimes you look more like the other. So this one, in this book, one of the kids looks more white, one of the kids looks more black, and it just talks about like their different experiences and their different personalities. I think there's a couple of kids in our class that are really into fencing, and that's one of the kids' sports, and he gets really into that, so it talks about fencing a lot too. So anyway, it's just a really good book. It's realistic fiction. I highly recommend it. She's an amazing author, and it's also cool for those of you who have met her before, too. So anyway, that is Black Brother, Black Brother by Joel Parker Rhodes. Okay, today we are right here. We're going to read a story called Flipped. Flipped is actually an excerpt from a novel that I believe I still have in my classroom. I know I had it at one point. So if anyone's interested in Black Brother, or Flipped, you can email me and I will get those for you. And I'm actually going to go back and talk about books for a second. Just a reminder, too, that book orders are due by next Tuesday, a week from today. Don't forget that you get entered into a raffle for every item that you buy. Also, I'm going to be going into Ike one day this week. I'm not sure which day yet, but if you are interested in me leaving a book for you, then please email me as soon as possible. I actually might go in this afternoon, or I might wait till Thursday or Friday. I'm still thinking about it. So anyway, get those books in and or get those book requests in, and I will get them for you as soon as possible. Okay, so today, like I said, we're reading Flipped, and then in social studies, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a second. So we're doing Flipped. We'll do social studies. We're going to start talking about hunters and gatherers, and then we'll read a chapter of Boy of the Painted Cave. So Flipped is right here, Flipped by Wendelin Van Dranen, okay, and it's on page 18 in your Springboard books. Before we start with the reading, I want you to push pause on me, and I want you to think about a time when you and another person, and it can be a friend, an adult, a teacher, a sibling, saw the same incident differently than you did. So you both saw the same situation happen or involved in the same situation, but you saw things totally differently. So explain both how you saw the incident and how the other person viewed it. Okay, and I can think of a few incidences when I was your age with friends and stuff, getting into arguments and seeing things totally differently. So right here, if you need a sentence frame, there are some sentence frames here. So one time that I experienced your different viewpoints was when what happened was that this happened and I felt this way, okay? And then you can talk about how the other person felt and how they saw things. So again, push pause on me, do this quick write in your notebook. Okay, you could have pushed pause as long as you want, but I don't really need to pause because you got that control. Okay, and then, oops, that's not for today, sorry. You're not gonna, okay, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna read a story, then we're gonna do the summary. Okay, so page 18 in your Springboard books, again, you are going to follow along with me, so please make sure you are doing that. So this is from the novel Flipped. This first part is called from the chapter Diving Under. All I've ever wanted is for Julie Baker to leave me alone, for her to back off, just give me some space. It all started the summer before second grade when our moving van pulled into her neighborhood. And since we're now about done with 8th grade, that, my friend, makes more than a half a decade of strategic avoidance and social discomfort. She didn't just barge into my life. She barged and shoved and wedged her way into my life. Did we invite her to get into our moving van and start climbing all over boxes? No, but that's exactly what she did, taking over and showing off like only Julie Baker can. My dad tried to stop her. "Hey," he said, as she's catapulting herself on board, "what are you doing? You're getting mud everywhere." So true, too. Her shoes were like caked with the stuff. She didn't hop out, though. Instead, she planted her rear end on the floor and started pushing a big box with her feet. "Don't you want some help?" She glanced my way. "It sure looks like you need it." I didn't like the implication. And even though my dad had been tossing me the same sort of look all week, I could tell he didn't like this girl either. "Hey, don't do that," he warned her. "There are some really valuable things in that box." "Oh, well, how about this one?" She scoots over to a box labeled Linux and starts looking my way again. "Should we push it together?" "No, no, no," my dad says, then pulls her up by the arm. "Why don't you run along home? Your mother was probably wondering where you are." This was the beginning of my to become acute awareness that the girl cannot take a hint of any kind. Does she zip on home like a kid should when they've been invited to leave? No. She says, "Oh, my mom knows where I am. She said it was fine." Then she points across the street and says, "We just live right over there." My father looks to where she's pointing and mutters, "Oh boy." Then he looks at me and winks and he says, "Bryce, isn't it time for you to go inside and help your mother?" I knew right off that this was a ditch play, and I didn't think about it until later. But ditch wasn't a play I'd run with my dad before. Face it, pulling a ditch is not something discussed with dads. It's like against parental law to tell your kids it's okay to ditch someone, no matter how annoying or muddy they might be. But there he was, putting the play in motion, and man, he didn't have to wink twice. I smiled and said, "Sure thing," then jumped off the lift gate, and headed for my new front door. I heard her coming after me, but I couldn't believe it. Maybe it just sounded like she was chasing me. Maybe she was really going the other way. But before I got up the nerve to look, she blasted right past me, grabbing my arm and yanking me along. This was too much. I planted myself and was about to tell her to get lost when the weirdest thing happened. I was making this big windmill motion to break away from her, but somehow on the downswing, my hand wound up tangling into hers. I couldn't believe it. There I was, holding the mud monkey's hand. I tried to shake her off, but she just clamped on tight and yanked me along, saying, "Come on." My mom came out of the house immediately, got the world's sappiest look on her face. "Well, hello," she says to Julie. "Hi." I'm still trying to pull free, but the girl's got me in a death grip. My mom's grinning, looking at her hands and my fiery red face. "And what's your name, honey?" "Juliana Baker. I live right over there," she says, pointing with her unoccupied hand. "Well, I see you've met my son," she says, still grinning away. "Uh-huh." Finally, I break free and do the only manly thing available when you're 7 years old. I dive behind my mother. Mom puts her arms around me and says, "Bryce, honey, why don't you show Juliana around the house?" I flash her help and warning signals with every part of my body, but she's not receiving. Then she shakes me off and says, "Go on." Julie would have tramped right in if my mother hadn't noticed her shoes and told her to take them off. And after those were off, my mom told her that her dirty socks had to go too. Julie wasn't embarrassed, not one bit. She just peeled them off and left them in a crusty heap on our front porch. I didn't exactly give her a tour. I locked myself in the bathroom instead. And after about 10 minutes of yelling back at her that no, I wasn't coming out anytime soon, things got quiet in the hall. Another 10 minutes went by, and I got the nerve to peek out the door. No Julie. I snuck out and looked around, and yes, she was gone. Not a very sophisticated ditch, but hey, I was only 7. My troubles were far from over, though. Every day she came back, over and over again. Can Bryce play? I could hear her asking from my hiding place behind the couch. Is he ready yet? One time, she even cut across the yard and looked through my window. I spotted her in the nick of time and dove under my bed, but man, that right there tells you something about Julie Baker. She's got no concept of personal space, no respect for privacy. The world is her playground, and watch out below. Julie's on the slide. Okay, so that was from obviously the perspective of a kid named Bryce and his first meeting with his neighbor, Julie Baker. Now we're going to read from another chapter called Flipped, and this time it's from Julie's perspective. And the whole book of Flipped goes back and forth between their two perspectives. Okay. From the chapter Flipped, and we are on page 20, just in case you've lost your spot. The first day I met Bryce Losky, I flipped. Honestly, one look at him and I became a lunatic. In his eyes, something in his eyes, it's his eyes, something in his eyes. They're blue and framed in the blackness of his lashes. They're dazzling, absolutely breathtaking. It's been over 6 years now, and I learned long ago to hide my feelings. But oh, those first days, those first years, I thought I would die for wanting to be with him. 2 days before second grade is when it all started, although the anticipation began weeks before. Ever since my mother had told me there was a family with a boy my age moving into the new house right across the street. Soccer camp had ended, and I'd been so bored because there was nobody, absolutely nobody in the neighborhood to play with. Oh, there were kids, but every one of them was older. That was dandy for my brothers, but what it left me was home alone. My mother was there, but she had better things to do than to kick a soccer ball around. So she said anyway. At the time, I didn't think there was anything better than kicking a soccer ball around, especially not the likes of laundry or dishes or vacuuming. But my mother didn't agree. And the danger of being home alone with her was that she'd recruit me to help her wash or dust or vacuum, and she wouldn't tolerate the dribbling of a soccer ball around the house as I moved from chore to chore. To play it safe, I waited outside for weeks, just in case the new neighbors moved in early. Literally, it was weeks. I entertained myself playing soccer with our dog Champ. Mostly he'd just block because a dog can't exactly kick and score. But once in a while, he'd dribble with his nose. The scent of a ball must overwhelm a dog, though, because Champ would eventually try to chomp it, then lose the ball to me. When the Losky's moving van finally arrived, everyone in my family was happy. Little Juliana was finally going to have a playmate. My mother, being the truly sensible adult that she is, made me wait more than an hour before going over to meet him. Give them a chance to stretch their legs, Juliana, she said. They'll want some time to adjust. She wouldn't even let me watch from the yard. I know you, sweetheart. Somehow that ball will wind up in their yard and you'll just have to go retrieve it. So I watched from the window, and every few minutes I'd ask, now? And she'd say, give them a little while longer, would you? Then the phone rang, and the minute I was sure she was good and preoccupied, I tugged on her sleeve and asked, now? She nodded and whispered, okay, but take it easy. I'll be over there in a minute. I was too excited not to charge across the street, but I did try very hard to be civilized once I got to the moving van. I stood outside looking in for a record-breaking length of time, which was hard because there he was, about halfway back, my new sure-to-be best friend, Bryce Losky. Bryce wasn't really doing much of anything. He was more hanging back, watching his father move boxes onto the lift gate. I remember feeling sorry for Mr. Losky because he looked worn out, moving boxes all by himself. I also remember that he and Bryce were wearing matching turquoise polo shirts, which I thought was really cute. Really nice. When I couldn't stand it any longer, I called "Hi" into the van, which made Bryce jump, and then, quick as a cricket, he started pushing a box like he'd been working all along. I could tell from the way Bryce was acting so guilty that he was supposed to be moving boxes, but he was sick of it. He'd probably been moving things for days. It was easy to see that he needed a rest. He needed some juice, something. It was also easy to see that Mr. Losky wasn't about to let him quit. He was going to keep moving boxes until he collapsed, and by then Bryce might be dead before he'd ever had a chance to move in. The tragedy of it catapulted me into the moving van. I had to help. I had to save him. When I got to his side to help him shove a box forward, the poor boy was so exhausted that he just moved aside and let me take over. Mr. Losky didn't want me to help, but at least I saved Bryce. I'd been in the moving van all of 3 minutes when his dad sent him off to help his mother unpack things inside the house. I chased Bryce up the walkway, and that's when everything changed. You see, I caught up with him and grabbed his arm, trying to stop him. Maybe we could play a little before he got trapped inside. And the next thing I know, he's holding my hand, looking right into my eyes. My heart stopped. It just stopped beating. And for the first time in my life, I had that feeling. You know, like the world is moving all around you, all beneath you, all inside you, and you're floating in midair. And the only thing keeping you from drifting away is the other person's eyes. They're connected to yours by some invisible physical force, and they hold you fast while the rest of the world swirls and twirls and falls away completely. I almost got my first kiss that day. I'm sure of it. But then his mother came out the front door, and he was so embarrassed that his cheeks turned completely red, and the next thing you know, he's hiding in the bathroom. I was waiting for him to come out when his sister, Lynetta, saw me in the hallway. She seemed big and mature to me, and since she wanted to know what was going on, I told her a little bit about it. I shouldn't have, though, because she wiggled the bathroom doorknob and started teasing Bryce something fierce. "Hey, baby brother," she called through the door. "There's a hot chick out here waiting for you. What's the matter? Afraid she's got cooties?" It was so embarrassing. I yanked on her arm and told her to stop it, but she wouldn't, so finally I just left. I found my mother outside talking to Mrs. Losky. Mom had given her the beautiful lemon bundt cake that was supposed to be our dessert that night. The powdered sugar looked soft and white, and the cake was still warm, sending sweet lemon smells into the air. My mouth was watering just looking at it, but it was in Mrs. Losky's hands, and I knew there was no getting it back. All I could do was try to eat up the smell while I listened to the two of them discuss grocery stores and the weather forecast. After that, Mom and I went home. It was very strange. I hadn't gotten to play with Bryce at all. But I knew that his eyes were dizzying blue, that he had a sister who was not to be trusted, and that he had almost kissed me. Okay, so that was Flipped, and again, if you are interested at all, it is a whole novel. So right now you are going to, in just a moment, push pause on me. You're going to do a quick write. That means like no more than 5 minutes, and then just write what our story Flipped was about. Please include as much detail as possible, and we will share these tomorrow. So push pause right now, bust out your summary. Alrighty. Okay, hold on. Okay, so we're going to move on to social studies now. So if you did not give yourself a little break and you want one, go ahead and do that now. Today we are going to be taking notes. So you still have your notebook out from writing your summary. You're going to be taking notes on the Hunter and Gatherer slideshow. Yeah, so we're going to do that. I think I'm going to make a separate video, by the way, for Boy the Painted Cave, just because this is getting long. But anyway, we're going to watch the Hunter-Gatherer slideshow. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So hunters and gatherers are two different ways that early humans got food. Hunting is hunting prey, hunting meat, buffalo, whatever they hunted back then. And then gatherers are those that gathered vegetables, berries, grains, things like that, more of the vegetable eaters. Our essential question is to explain how the hunters and gatherers have adapted to survive their environment. Different environments that the hunters and gatherers lived in had different foods and things like that. So the early humans had to adapt depending on their environment to however they are going to get food. Okay, so we are going to watch this video. It's a short one, I believe, about the different groups of people. Actually, this is 6 minutes long.
All right, welcome back to World History with Mr. McCall. Well, today we're going to be dealing with hunters and gatherers during the Paleolithic and Neolithic age. But specifically, our goal today is compare the lives of hunter-gatherers during the Paleolithic age, the Old Stone Age, with the lives of people during the Neolithic age, the New Stone Age. So what we have here are two pictures. One's the Paleolithic age and one's the Neolithic age. Give you some time to think about which one you think is which. All right, and now let's go ahead and discuss that. Now, I would call this one our Neolithic age, and let me explain why. Because if you look at this home, this has a lot of work here. This is a cross-section of what the house looks like. It's very big, and the word that is important to remember here is this is a permanent shelter. Whereas when we look over here, this is a temporary shelter. This is something that they could collapse very easily. If the animals they were following moved or migrated, they could very easily collapse this and follow the herd. So we have here Paleo, we have here Neo. This one they're farming, this one they're hunting and gathering. All right, so let's take a look at our lesson today. We're going to compare. So we're going to compare the two. We have the Paleolithic and the Neolithic. Now, before we do anything, we need to talk about some similarities. So let's talk about some similarities that they both have. Well, they're both humans, right? I mean, still humans, they're just living differently. They have to eat. Eat to survive. They have families. They have communities. They have homes. Hunters and gatherers had homes. They were just easily collapsible and could be easily moved. Whereas in the Neolithic times, once they have farms, they decide they're going to stay put because they don't have to worry about where their food's going to come from. All right, so now let's discuss the difference between these two. First off, let's start with Paleolithic. They were hunters and gatherers. That is how they got their food. Hunted animals and gathered plants, fruit, vegetables, stuff along those lines. They were nomadic. If you're a hunter and gatherer, it's probably best for you to be nomadic because your food might move. Or it might change with the seasons. They were nomadic, so they generally followed the herd, the group of animals. They found new plants to eat. All time was dedicated to trying to find food. I'm going to put pretty much all time. Pretty much always looking for food. All right, so we've got our Paleolithic people. Now let's talk about are Neolithic people. Now, how were they different? Well, Neolithic people were generally farmers. They had at least someone in their community that was doing the farming. If you think of our culture, we're more like the farmers because we do have people in our civilization that farm for us. It's just we don't all farm. All right, now let's see. They had a stable food supply. Because they had farmers and people that were doing the farm work and getting the food, they didn't have to worry about where the food was going to come from. It was right around the corner. So because they had a stable food supply, they were able to build permanent shelters. When we looked at that original picture, we saw that their homes were going to stay there for a long time. They weren't going to pick up and move. Now, because they had a lot of people with permanent shelters and not everybody had to do the farming, they had different jobs. So people started to focus on different things. And more importantly, I'll put this in front of that, there was more free time. There was more free time for people to do different jobs, to do different things, to experiment with art, to experiment with music and all kinds of other things that lead to civilization. All right, well, that's it. That's what I wanted to do today. I wanted to compare the lives of humans during the Paleolithic times and the Neolithic times.
Okay, so that should give you guys an idea of the two different time periods that we're going to be talking about and exploring during our hunters and gatherers unit in the early humans. Oops, okay. So hunters gatherers are people who hunt animals and gather wild plant seeds, fruits, and nuts to survive. And then here are just a little bit of a few little jokes. I am not going to show you this video. It's 10 minutes. It is in the slide deck, which you can access from the weekly planner. And so I would love for you to watch that on your own. Okay, the Paleolithic area, that is the first part of the Stone Age, and Paleolithic means old stone. Okay, so when we think about cavemen, that's kind of what we're thinking about, the Paleolithic era. All of our ancestors lived during the Paleolithic era, Homo sapiens and all other hominids. Okay, that's like the very, very early times. Nomads were people who regularly move from place to place. They would follow the food, okay? So they would follow whatever it was that they were looking for. They did not set up shop and stay anywhere for long. Okay, so we're going to watch this video, and then I think this one is the short one. Yeah, it's very short, unless this is the ad.
We just had the most amazing family vacation. This is so exciting!
In this History Illustrated video, we're going to discuss the vocabulary word hunter-gatherer. Now, a hunter-gatherer does exactly what their name suggests. They would hunt, or they would gather, or they do both. They hunt and gather things to survive. So imagine that you would have a guy that would look like this. He would wander around looking for things to survive on, and perhaps he would just follow a herd of mammoths looking for food and hunting them, or maybe he would gather berries or nuts or any number of things that would grow naturally in the wild. These people would be called hunter-gatherers. They are typically nomadic, which means they wander. They go wandering around looking for things, which means they have no permanent home. So no permanent home. They wander, and they typically hunt or gather all the things necessary to live.
Okay, so that's just another little definition of that. So we're going to close that. like I said, I'm going to make a separate video for Boy. Actually, I'm just going to try and do it on this one. Okay, so Boy of the Painted Cave. Push pause, take a little break. Maybe you'll come back to this later, but I am now going to read chapter 6 of Boy of the Painted Cave. Where we last left off, Tao has kind of found himself a new little home in a cave. Ram is in there with him, and he is painting on the walls of the cave. So I think you could say he's pretty much living his best life. Okay. So now on to chapter 6, which is on page 61. This is a short one. So go ahead and follow along with me. Page 61, chapter 6. Later that spring, Tao and Ram roamed the valley and woodlands. Mostly they hunted in the slough, where the game was plentiful and where they were not likely to be seen by Volt and the other hunters. Far to the north, in the high mountains, the retreating glacier sent down torrents of cold water to form crystal-clear lakes, rippling streams, and endless swamps. In the icy creeks, Tao and Ram caught trout and pike. Sometimes in the distance, they saw the big brown bears fishing along the water's edges of the sandbars, slapping salmon out of the water with their great paws. When the hunting was good, they caught much game. Tao left Ram in the little cave and returned to camp with rabbits, quail, geese, and strings of salmon for Kala and the clan people. One afternoon, Volt and Garth were standing in the clearing when the boy came in. Volt scratched his head with a big hairy hand, squinting. "You bring in much game," he said, "yet you say you hunt alone." Tao did not want to lie, yet he knew if he told the truth that everything he had would be taken from him. The cave, the paintings, the wolf dog, everything. He stared hard at the ground. "I hunt with no man," he said. "Then you have found a place of plenty," said Garth curiously. "If that is so, you will tell us where it is." Once again, Tao hesitated. He dare not talk of the slough, but he could not tell about the other places. "If you will go one day's walk to the spruce forest, where the creeks run down to the big waters, there the hunters will find salmon, but the brown bears are taking many. The hunters will have to hurry." Volt grunted, shook his head, and walked away with Garth behind him. Tao knew it was not easy for the big leader to ask a boy where game was to be found. Yet the small band of clan hunters could not cover all the land. I'm writing something down, sorry. Whenever Tao saw the hunters in his area, he stayed in his little cave. Here, with Ram lying at his feet, he practiced his drawing, covering the walls with pictures of bears, bison, and mammoths. He was never satisfied with these, but when he made pictures of Ram, he felt his images were good. Down near the glades, a big glacier lake extended a long blue finger into the slough. It was a place of beauty, a place where Tao could always find something new and surprising, and it soon became one of his favorite haunts. Here he saw the tall white cranes stalking through the reeds, jabbing for the minnows and crayfish. He watched the screaming fish eagles swoop down to snatch squirming eels and perch out of the glistening waters. One day, as the lake lay streaming in the early morning sun, he and Ram walked around the marshy shoreline, hunting for duck eggs. They had just come through a strand of reed grass when Tao saw an animal, the size of a large horse, feeding in the shallows. The boy drew in his breath. It was a giant deer. He had heard about such creatures, but they were rare and only a few hunters had ever seen one. Unaware of the danger, the deer stood in the knee-deep water, raking up some strings of water lilies. Its huge rack of antlers spread out from its head like two great hands with the palms up and the sharp prongs of fingers curving inward. Tao watched as the deer came closer. He kept his hand on Ram's shoulder to hold him back. The wolf was eager to begin the chase, and Tao could feel the tension in its body. "No, Ram," he whispered. "You are no match for the great deer. In the water, you would have no chance. Tao knew the big deer could not outrun the wolf, but with its massive spread of antlers, it could be dangerous. Boy and wolf stood on the edge of the lake, watching quietly. They were so taken up with the sight of the huge animal that they failed to hear the footsteps of a stranger as he came up behind them. It was an old man, thin and gaunt, with squint creases at the corners of his deep blue eyes. His face was covered with a long, almost white beard, and he carried a long wooden spear and a deerskin bag slung over his left shoulder. He stopped a short distance away and watched them for a while. Then, as if not to startle them, he coughed lightly. Ram spun around, snarling, the hair along the back of his neck bristling with anger. The big deer stopped feeding. It threw up its head and splashed away across the shallows. Still standing at the water's edge, Tao turned to face the hunter. His heart was pounding. He had broken many taboos. He had walked on forbidden land. He made images on cave walls, and he hunted with a wolf dog. Now this stranger would be a witness. Tao placed his hand on Ram's shoulder and ordered him to stay. Then he limped slowly toward the man, trying to act unafraid. The old man looked down at him from under bushy eyebrows. There was no anger in his face, only a touch of mild surprise. He saw the bad foot and the air of boyish defiance. "You are Tao of the Valley people," he said. "You know my name?" Tao said, startled. "Yes," said the old man. "I travel far to paint images in the secret caverns, and I hear much." Tao gasped. He felt a mixture of dismay and awe. The stranger standing before him was Graybeard, the cave painter, the shaman of all the clans. Never did he think he would meet such a great one. "I also know you hunt on forbidden land," said Graybeard. The boy winced and shifted from one foot to the other. "It is forbidden only because of the demons and evil spirits," he said, his voice cracking. "Are you not afraid of demons?" "I have heard the wailing screams and the wild howls, but they are the cries of the eagle owl and the loons. If there are other demons, I have never seen one." The old man leaned on his spear. "You also hunt with a wolf dog. That too is taboo in your clan." For a moment, Tao was quiet. Then he swallowed hard and said, "The people of my clan are starving. The slough is full of game. With the wolf dog, I bring them much food." Graybeard nodded. "You are not afraid of demons. You do not believe in evil spirits. And for you, taboos melt away like the winter snows." "I am sorry," said Tao, "but I do not believe these things are bad. The animals, the birds, the trees give us food and clothing. Yet our leaders see only evil." Graybeard nodded. Tao was sure he saw a glint of understanding in the old man's eye. Okay, and so that, oh, no, it's not over. Sorry, I thought that was the end. "And you know better than the leaders," said Graybeard. "No," said Tao. "I only know that the slough is a place of many good things. Here I find food. I watch the animals and birds. I feel good here." Graybeard looked out across the blue lake. "And now you watch the great antlered one." "Yes," said Tao. "I have never seen a giant deer before." "There are many far to the north, near the ice country," said Graybeard. "They come down this way sometimes when the snows are bad." Ram was standing behind Tao, a half snarl still curled on his lips. The old man looked at the wolf, unafraid. "How long have you hunted with this wolf dog?" Tao stopped to think. "Since the end of the snows." "And by what name do you call him?" "I call him Ram." The old man smiled. "You think it is good to have a wolf dog?" asked Tao. "Yes," said Graybeard. "They help much with the hunting, and they protect the camp at night." "Our leader, Volt, hates the wolf dogs," says Tao. "He believes that they are a curse of evil, and he will have none of them." "I know your leader well," said Graybeard. "He is a good man, but too often he dreams of spirits and demons. Tao came a step closer, whispering, I have told no one about Ram. I will say nothing, said Graybeard. I come only to paint in the secret cavern. Tao felt a wave of relief. He knew Graybeard would keep his word. The herds are coming back, said the old man, nodding. They will be here when the fields are green with new grass. I have come from the other camps with the news. Now I will paint images of the great beasts in the secret caverns to bring good hunting. Tao wished to hear more about the image making and the painting, but he saw the old man was tired. Will you come and share food with us? Asked Tao. We have a small cave on the other side of the valley. Graybeard leaned against the trunk of a birch tree. His spear rested on the crook of his arm as he rubbed his eyes with the back of his hands. Yes, he said, it will be good to rest. Okay, so that is the end of chapter 6. Now you are going to head over to Otis. You're going to answer your chapter 6 questions in Otis. And that is Language Arts and Social Studies for today. Happy Tuesday, friends. I will see you tomorrow.